Hello and welcome to my new podcast, The Lion People, where we dive deep into fascinating topics that push the boundaries of what we know and imagine. I'm your host, Alessa Esteban, and today we're exploring the legendary lion people. Get ready for a journey into the myth and mystery. As an Egyptologist, an artist, and a spiritual coach, with a deep passion for spiritual Egyptology, I've spent years researching topics like these, blending both academic knowledge and personal intuition. The lion people have been part of human mythology for centuries, appearing in various cultures and sparking endless curiosity. But what do these stories really mean, and why have they persisted throughout time? So sit back, relax, and let's unravel the mystery of the lion people. And if you enjoyed today's episode, don't forget to subscribe and leave a review. It really helps the show. So thank you so much for listening and enjoy. Hi, I am your host, Alessa Esteban, and I want to talk on this podcast. Instead of continuing reading from the book of The Lion People of Murray Hope, I want to talk a little bit about our origins and how our cosmic origins are portrayed in the walls and the scriptures, the hieroglyphs in ancient Egypt of the temples, on the wall of the temples. So I would like to focus on this episode on how this is represented there and how can the gods of ancient Egypt, which these archetypes of energies, these principles of energies we have embedded in our or coded in our DNA in a way. So I want to talk about how these gods are represented there on the walls of Egypt, although it's not the only civilization, because there are also other civilizations that are super old, like Syria, and also in Mexico, with the Mayan, with the Aztec cultures, and even earlier. But still, I'm very, very interested on diving deep into these ancient civilizations, but right now only certainly focusing on Egypt, which is for me, in my regards, the one that is the oldest. And I would dare to say that this is the origin of humanity, because that origin is represented on its walls. And it hasn't been given that importance, right? I mean, it hasn't been given that credibility so far. Not even the academics had. So it hasn't been established as the root of the civilization that we are now. So what happens is that historians and academics, as well as we know, don't go beyond back 6,000 years of antiquity when they try to explain civilization. But we have knowledge through channeling and memories and other types of information awakening within us. So that probably we are older than that, and humanity has been on earth like even further back in time. Specifically, we have memories of more than 22,000 years as priests and priestesses of the new civilization that was going to be seated on earth. So this information from over 22,000 years ago resonate with us, or at least it resonates with ourselves. So yes, every time we talk about Egypt, we travel back there, we connect with the most basic essence of our being, because we realize that our being is created precisely under those principles that we can recognize, feel, and resonate with, represented there. Well, I wanted to start by talking about the history of humanity as the technology that it is. DNA, it is a technology. And humanity was not generated here on planet Earth, but rather in other star system. One of the main and oldest ones is in the Lyra constellation, in the Lyra star system, where different types of consciousness were created. One of these types includes what we know as the blue avians. In Egypt are represented as these beautiful beings, these gods with bird heads, like avian heads, like Thoth, the god of wisdom, magic, and the god that invented writing, the hieroglyphs. He developed all this language so then we could communicate in different levels, because hieroglyphs have different levels of information. Some of them can be only understood and read by the initiates. So he would be the vizier of the creator god, the almighty creator god of the universe, who would be Amon or Ra, representing the solar system. But Ra, the sun god, it's not only representing our main solar system, it's also representing all the main solar stars, the solar systems of other systems. It could be also the central sun in Alcyone in Pleiades, or could be also the central star, or representing the central star as a sun of Sirius A, which is very deeply related to Egypt and the gods of Egypt. Thoth would write behind the creator god how the entire universe was being created. He knows how the solar system was being formed and how planet Earth came into being along with the other planets in our system, and how humanity and everything on Earth emerged, right? So these are the oldest myths of creation. I mean, he knows exactly the measurements of the universe, the hidden occult mathematical measurements to create life, to become, to resurrect the dead, or to become alive again when Swan's head was like chop off the body of the swan. So he was the one who knew how to put it back together and bring it back to life. So this is a very important god in terms of wisdom and magic. For the ancient Egyptians, everything was together. Magic, there was no division on science and nature and religion. Everything was part of the same cosmogonical vision. So magic was everything. They breathed magic whole time. So coming back to the blue avians, the birds originated in Lyra. And we also know that in this same constellation and system, space or creation is shared with the principle of the lions, the lion people. These are the gods with lion heads, the leonine consciousness, and we see them represented again in Egypt alongside the birds with Thoth and Horus. They are represented as Sekhmet, Bastet, the twin lions, Shu and Tefnut. These are the lions of time, of the horizon, the Achet. But sometimes Tefnut is also represented as one of the first mother goddesses. With her breath and the moisture from her exhalation, she was able to create a life on earth. From her came the children of the earth, and without Tefnut, there could be no fertility on earth. The children of the earth are precisely these great gods we know and can't easily identify. We know very well Isis and Osiris. These two deities were the first twin flame that was divided and descended on earth to begin humanity's story and show the contract humanity has with divinity and souls. They are this representative icon of this covenant of the twin flame having this contract, soul contract with divinity. This is the representation, but it's very interesting because Tefnut, the lioness goddess who brought moisture and fertilized the earth with her spit, is a female deity. She spat on the earth, and Geb, who is a male god, was fertilized. For the Egyptians, this myth and its origins is like slightly different on the other creation myths, where it's the contrary. The female is earth and the masculine is the light, who fertilizes earth and creation, and therefore creation starts. But well, in terms of the lion people, we also have the goddess Sekhmet, a powerful lion-headed goddess of war, magic, and the desert. She can unleash plagues and eliminate what she dislikes about humanity and regenerate the life on earth again. She is a warrior and a destroyer by nature, but she's also a healer. She is the only one who can really restore healthy humanity again. She's the only one that can control the beasts of plague and just restore all of the damage. But she is the one who creates this destruction as well. That's why she's the goddess for the warriors and the goddess of desert, and her breath can be felt in the air, in the hot air of the desert. She's her name means the powerful one, as we know by other videos that I made. But yeah, so she embodies the feminine power we associate with strength and security. And she has a counterpart, which is Bastet, the little cat, the beautiful cat woman, or representing unconditional love. Bastet is a gentle cat who purrs after calming her fury, and the fury of the lioness. So she embodies the feminine and the cycles of the moon and love itself and happiness and being, like drunk in love, because part of her myth, of Sekhmet's myth, is that when she got drunk by Thoth, the god of wisdom, to calm her fury and stop killing humanity, then she became the loving, purring cat, Bastet. So Sekhmet is currently a very popular archetype, especially associated with female empowerment, symbolizing the strength and the confidence that women can hold nowadays. So she originates in Lyra, as the lions were originated in Lyra. And it is essential to remember something very important about Lyra here. Lyra was the place where the first lion consciousness was created together with the avians, but they spread around other star systems because of the Draconian and Orion wars. They just, when the planets started to be destroyed in their systems, the survivors and the most important wisdom masters were evacuated to other planets or other systems. So some of them went to Pleiades, and most of them went to Sirius A. And in Sirius A is where the Light Council was established. And it's formed mainly by lions and humans, with the first prototype of the human body. I'm going to explain this now. And also avians. So actually the Sekhmet that we see on the walls in Egypt has always a solar disk over her head, representing that she comes from a solar system, which means that even though the lions were originated in Lyra, she is from Sirius A. She is from Sirius. Okay. So the Leonine and Blue Avian consciousness as foundational principles, these two energetic principles that inhabited Lyra decided to create the first prototype of the human body. they began genetic experiments to generate a prototype with the form we now recognize as a humanoid figure with a human-like head, two arms, two legs, and a torso. These beings were the ones we now associate with the giants, and iconically with the avatars. Do you remember the movie Avatar? These giant humanoid blue-skinned beings? Well, the first Lyrians were similar to this description. They had fewer strands or filaments in their DNA, and they had only three, but they already had this humanoid form that we recognize now. However, they were extremely tall, massive beings, which is why they are considered giants. And they are the blue vegan from the planet of Vega, in the constellation of Lyra. This is where they were created, and the Leonine and the blue avian created this prototype, so then they could, let's say, rehearse the incarnation wheel. Like, they perfection the bodies, they work in different, they started the program of reincarnation and the soul and body connection, and how the information can be transmitted from the body to the soul and from the soul to the body, embedding this information in DNA. And this was like a time that was probably thousands and thousands of years until they kind of made the first perfect prototype, which is the one that we know as the blue vegan Lyrans. From not vegan from not eating meat, because they, of course they didn't eat meat, because the term of veganism comes from there. But anyway, it was because it was the customs of the Lyrans, of the blue Lyrans. So it was in this context that the Draconian Wars began. These are referred to as Draconian because they involved beings associated with the principle of darkness or shadow that came from the Draco constellation. So these early conflicts can be simplistically called wars of light and darkness. However, we must expand our minds and consider these terms as representing the principle of light and creation and the principle of darkness, and which is like expand and construct and deconstruct, right? Like these two sides of the same coin. These principles are about balance. They are not inherently good or evil. Light is not purely benevolent, nor is darkness purely malevolent. It's essential to avoid premature judgment and interpretation here. So, for simplicity and to move the story forward that I want to tell you, it was a conflict between light and shadow, or about this lovely connected consciousness and this dark conqueror unconnected shadow consciousness. So the beings representing light were the Lyrans, the giant blue beings with a deep connection to their planets, spirituality, unconditional love, and unconditional love for the universe, harmonious relationships with other species and races. And the Leonine and the avian creators allowed the Lyrans to grow their consciousness and develop in these worlds with a slightly denser physical form that their own, because the avians are not so dense as, we are talking about different frequencies of density, and this is how also it's, they are able to develop like more advanced bodies and systems and than the density that we are gonna find now on Earth. And that's how the differences in between and through millennia has been portrayed and changing. So, well, anyway, From here, the story continues, but this foundation explains the balance between light and darkness and the early conflicts that shaped creation in this system. That's what I'm trying to say. So let's say that the birds and the lions create this other environment in this other planet in Vega. This other race that begins to grow and take its own course, always based on a connection with nature, with love, with what surrounds them, with spiritual growth, with growing their light. They are a race that has a super powerful inner light and is also dedicated on creation, creating other beings, creating minerals, creating other animals and other somewhat smaller races. Like, for example, I don't know, the felines we know here on planet Earth, the cats, which also originated in Lyra. The small domestic felines, well, they are fragments of this consciousness and are pure creation, a connection with pure creation. And everyone that has a cat knows this, right? But when the shadow arrives, which is represented by the naturally warrior-like consciousness, that all-encompassing and naturally conquering consciousness of draconian origin, because this consciousness originates from the constellation of Draco, as I said, and the constellation of Draco is somehow related to the temple of Angkor Wat in Cambodia. Well, this is another type of consciousness, and for that reason, an origin is also established there in this geographical area because they too want to be included. So they are included. They because the project of planet Earth was one of inclusion of all races and cosmic systems, as we are now realizing, right? So, of course, the Draconians also have a place on planet Earth. They have had it for ages. The dragons were on China at the beginning of times, and in these geographical areas before China was called China, of course, but there were like dragons also around in the geographical area of Europe. And just as they are represented and connected in that temple in Cambodia, they are represented and connected with the Egyptian gods as well, who collaborated with the other gods here on planet Earth. So therefore, they are not considered, or at least not all of them, to be evil or terrifying. Also talking about the reptilians, the reptilian representation. And so we have their representation as well in Egypt. For example, there is a Sobek, who is a god in lizard form, with a lizard head, somewhat more similar to dragons as well. And then we have Khnum, the god Khnum. It's also a creator god. Because, by the way, because the reptilians also have this capacity for genetic creation and genetic work, the god Num is represented making human bodies out of clay in Egyptian temples. He is depicted as the god who created the bodies of kings and pharaohs, and in Deir el-Bahari is also represented on the walls of this mortuary temple of Hatshepsut, creating the body of Queen Hatshepsut before she was born. Also, it's important to say that Khnum is known for creating the bodies, but not for creating the souls, because in this mortuary temple as well, it is represented that the origin of Hatshepsut's soul comes from the god Ammon and the goddess Nut, which is another mother goddess. And this mother goddess comes from Pleiades. Mut is like the mother, and it's one of the women goddesses most important in ancient Egypt. Okay, so the oldest representation of this god Khnum is in this temple, and the first But Hatshepsut first was a queen, so I want to talk a little bit about her story. She's a queen who becomes a pharaoh, and at least is the first to take on this title, not to work as a pharaoh, because we know that probably Nefertiti was one working as a pharaoh as well when her husband Akhenaton was not there in power anymore, but still Hatshepsut is the first one that represents this in her temples and represents the link on how her soul might be of divine origin. So then she has the right to become a pharaoh and to, be represented as a man with the pharaoh's beard and the crown, with the headdress that the pharaoh was always wearing, because the title of a pharaoh in this case was reserved only for men, since, let's say, the lineage of the divinity of kings in Egypt was always connected to the woman, to the feminine side, to the feminine lineage. So it was redundant in a way for a woman to become a pharaoh because she was the one who granted him the throne, as it is represented, and this comes from the story and the name of Isis, as Set, who in her head she wears the crown that represents the hieroglyph of the throne. So this is part of her name and denotes that she is the one granting royalty and passing through her blood this divine lineage and the right, therefore, to rule Egypt, because they needed to be connected with the gods. So the first gods that were ruling in Egypt were Isis and Osiris. And then after, her son Horus, which is an avian with all this avian knowledge, at least from the origins of times in other star systems, then he is the one who is a demigod, half human, half a god, to rule in Egypt and teach what is needed to the other to become kings, right, for the future. So therefore, all these women, the queens, the royal families, were, and all of the contemporary queens later, I'm talking about the contemporary or the most further later dynasties, they come, all of them, from the lineage of Isis, from the blood of Isis. So all the Egyptian dynasties are connected to Isis and the cult of her. And many times the queens practice this priesthood, being priestesses of Isis, or at least knowing very, very close about these processes and the divine processes that and responsibilities that a priestess carries, because they were the ones who would grant, by marrying the next man who would become a pharaoh, this royalty and this divinity as well. Because let's remember that back then divinity and titular charges were actually the same. You needed to be a demigod practically to be ruling the first of dynasties, the beginning of humankind, or the beginning of this spiritual civilization that was about to come on the next 1,000 years and develop on the next 1,000 years. So, yeah. This is what the pharaoh would become a pharaoh because they agreed to marry him and because they agreed to grant this royalty, and therefore Hatshepsut is the first female to be a pharaoh. It's a little bit like a pleonasm. It was already queen, but adopting the position of a pharaoh is to adopt a role that has a specific divinity, it carries a specific knowledge beyond power over the land and the people. I mean, it's like a very occult specific knowledge, and it's a relationship that humanity has with divinity and the covenant that humanity has with divinity. That's the key, right? That's the key to why this is such a special figure and considered a heretic, just like Akhenaten, who is from the same family, by the way, and the one who changed the religion of Egypt at some point. So they are considered heretics and, let's say, expelled and erased from the memory of Egypt, which means from the papyri. I mean, it means that they are erased from the papyri and the walls of the temples. And later, pharaohs come and erase their names for reasons we can't delve into right now because it would take us too far off the topic. But this part of Egyptian history is fascinating and I can only speculate on how this magical foundational knowledge, this cosmic stellar knowledge, is passed down through generations. As we know, knowledge is a power. So returning to Isis, the one who gives power, the one who grants royalty, she is associated with Sirius. She comes from Sirius. And how does she connects with Sekhmet, the goddess, this lioness goddess? Well, because in the Lyran wars, several planets in Lyra were destroyed. And the Lyran consciousness, the lions, the avians, and the giant blue lions, the avatars, the survivors of these very traumatic wars at the hands of the Draconians dispersed across different star systems, as I narrated before. They took their ships, let's say, and moved to other systems, arriving in Sirius, where they were given asylum. There, a great race of lions grows, the white lions. The white lions are representatives of Sirius, and they settle there. From this lineage, Sekhmet likely emerges as part of this lineage, and Isis as part of this lineage from Sirius as well, in her human form. Isis is connected to Sirius, and Isis is the twin sister of Osiris, as we well know. So Isis is connected to Sirius in different ways because Sirius was in ancient Egypt was called Sotis, and Sotis was this star that comes and arises in front of the face of the Sphinx in Giza to announce the beginning of the growth of the river Nile and the harvesting time and the seeding time. So it's like the prosperous time. It's a very awaited time during the millennia. And of course, this was pointed to be Isis. Sotis is another name of the goddess Isis. And also, Sotis is representative of the star as well. So we have also another feature that inside of the Great Pyramid of Giza, the Cheops Pyramid, the Khufu Pyramid, you have two shafts, and they are connected from the center, the king's chamber, and they go in a diagonal way upwards the pyramid, and the scientists have been like measuring these shafts, and they say they are aligned, pointing Orion on one side, and on the other side is like pointing to Sirio. And we know that the representation of Osiris is Orion, so we can imagine these are the two main important star systems in this period of time where all the magnificent monuments in Egypt were created. So it's the time of the builders, the time of the constructors, of the construction of the pyramids, and this is like in words of Graham Hancock, this in his book with together with Robert Baubal, where they are like developing the mystery of Orion aligned with the pyramids, they are saying that This is like a time, in words of Graham Hancock, this is a time measurement or a time indicator of the timeline where this was constructed, or the history of humanity, how it started. So it's pointing us to back to more than 10,000 years ago. Even some people are adventuring now to say even 22,000 years ago. And this is because of the relation with the precession of the equinoxes, where the axe of the planet is like whopping a little bit when it's doing one of a completed turn of the planets around the zodiac eras. So that takes around 22,000 years. So coming back to the principal gods of ancient Egypt, Isis, when she's born, there are five gods being born on the same at the same time in the 5 epagomenal days. So Isis is also being born with her twin sister Nephthys. Osiris is born with his twin brother Set, and also Horus is being born in these days. According to mythology, Set murders Osiris, and Isis, through her great magic, manages to recover Osiris' pieces and manages to resurrect him through these magic rituals. Osiris represents Orion, as we already said, because, many survivors from the Draconian Wars also arrived in Orion and in Pleiades, where their consciousness evolved over, thousands of millions of years, forming connections also in Pleiades. So the Pleiades also holds a very significant presence in Egypt. I'll touch on that shortly. Returning to Osiris and his connection with Orion, Orion serves a very, very important and large direct portal of souls to planet Earth. Due to Orion's portal system, which is the system of reincarnation, this is where, the souls have like a direct contact by being born in the wheel of reincarnation here on Earth. So this is the main place where the souls are passing through, right? So due to this portals system and importance, and because of the astrological and geographical location, because if we take in consideration that the Orion's belt is aligned with the main pyramids of Giza, it's like a direct portal. It's very near to planet Earth and to this connection. So Orion becomes the home of many star system survivors. So they make colonies over there. So Orion is the house, the container of almost all star races. So these colonies coexisted in Orion, and this is why the so-called Orion Wars occurred, involving conflicts of light and shadow that were carried into Orion and therefore carried onto Earth. So this is why we have so many links to karmatic situations, and it's been like a little bit stuck in the past, eras. So from there, these conflicts of light and shadow were brought to Earth. When Earth was established as Egypt originated, all this stellar consciousness materialized into physical bodies. Syrians who already existed there, and well as the others, let's call them the sheltered ones or the refugees who had fled from Lyra. They came to settle in Orion, using it as a direct portal to Earth to carry out the great project that would become this planet Earth. With their knowledge, they altered DNA, creating 12 filaments, or as far as I know, there are 12 filaments, but I am hearing in channeling right now that There may be 13 or 14. 14 because, Osiris was chopped in 14 pieces, but there was one piece missing, which is his phallus, and this might be how can I say it? It might be like a symbol of in vitro fertilization that was used as to create the 12th um, chain, or the 12th, let's say the 12th family of origin that will breed humanity. So that could be related to the chain jump to Homo sapiens. So through this represents consciousness awakening within us now, and these are the main consciousness. The main consciousnesses of the principal cosmic systems, which is why we see them depicted in the bas reliefs or high reliefs in ancient writings of Egypt, in the oldest documents we have from Egypt. All of these gods are present there since the first moment. So I think, of course, that divinity is within us. I mean, when we ask for protection from this God or that God, we are really asking the divine consciousness of our own soul for that protection. In reality, we are making this connection with divinity. And yes, indeed, there has been a lot of transformation regarding the concept of divinity from ancient Egypt, and how that concept of divinity was created and generated, and of course changed through millennia. Because truly, all of them, perhaps they projected their consciousness, perhaps in some ways they were present at the origin of planet Earth, because they created it. I mean, the gods, they probably were here. They created this star race that we are. And it is something extremely important for us to understand that truly Ra and all the gods that we see, because we see all the lions such as Sekhmet and Tefnut, even Hathor, and many other gods who appear alongside him, including Horus, of course, with a solar disk over his head. So they appear with a solar disk above their heads, and this is something very interesting because it signifies and corresponds to this cosmic system. I must say, our star system. When we see Ra, they are speaking about the solar system and our system, to which Earth belongs. And when we see Horus and Amun bearing the solar disk on their heads, it means that we are associating those star consciousness or consciousness groups with this star system we are. They somehow fused with this cosmic system. So in this, indeed, this is why the syncretism spoken of by academics is referred to Horus in Ra and Ra in Horus. They are like the same representation, a fusion of the same god. But when Horus bears the sun, it does not mean that he ceases to be Horus. So when, of course, he remains Horus, but now within himself, inside himself, he contains also Ra, or the power of Ra. So Horus, the one with the falcon head, is the first demigod, the first pharaoh on earth. We talked about him in the previous session. Actually, in fact, in the previous program, we spoke a lot about this pharaoh who represents the pharaoh on earth and embodies this divinity. And it is an incredibly powerful race. When Horus bears the solar disk on his head, what he is representing is us. This race, the human race, which has the capacity to be half gods, half humans. It means that we can achieve a connection with divinity in a way that makes us superhuman, hyperhuman, let's say, sort of demigods. It is a connection that allows us to open up many senses within the human body, many senses of perception, which are the same senses with which those ancient races arrived and started population on the new civilization in this geographical area that was gonna become Egypt later. Some authors have spoken about a guardian in Egypt, like these keepers of the wisdom of ancient Egypt and keepers of the wisdom of the Horus followers, the Shemsu Hor. And his name is Hakim. This guardian, in one interview that I saw, he said that the Egyptian race, I mean the ancient Egyptians at the beginning of time, around the Septepi that we are talking about, of more than 6,000 years ago, obviously, they had 300 awakened senses or main senses. I mean, we have five senses, right? And the sixth sense, which is called the feminine sense, is intuition. But really, if we think about it, 300 awakened senses. That is truly speaking of a demigod. How marvelous it was, this conceptual considered this what is conceptually considered a demigod, someone who can communicate telepathically with animals, with minerals, with nature, change the weather, control time, control I don't know, I mean, I could come up with 10 senses, but 300, levitation, I don't know, one of each sense for the day of the year practically. So it is an impressive amount, isn't it? So coming back to the representation of Horus Ra, the pharaoh with the solar system, with Ra as the sun, over the head. And what this is exactly what Akhenaten also wanted to do when he changed the religion of Egypt. When he said, hey, forget all the gods and focus on the solar disk. What he meant and what his legacy or message was is that we must worship our own star system, that is, our own divinity. To find that God that we are through all those past representations, because all these gods are going to be, let's say, one characteristic of this God that we are and that we have to become. So humanity, therefore, is an incredibly powerful race, or will be, if this experiment succeeds, because we will have and awaken within our DNA all those characteristics that we were to inherit by us through all these founders of Earth. How marvelous! And just to connect the Pleiades, which is my own cosmic system, quickly, yeah, we have Hathor, who is the goddess with the cow ears and is represented as a cow many times. And why as a cow? The cow might be, one of her representations might be the Milky Way. She is representative of the Milky Way, and along with Mut and with Nut, who are two mother goddesses as well. Mut means mother in ancient hieroglyphs. And Nut is also a mother goddess that bears the sun, actually. She is the night sky, and and she swallows the sun disk through the night to give it birth in the morning again. So these goddesses are representatives of Pleiades, of the sisterhood goddesses of this marvelous star system. The temple of Hathor, located in Dendera, actually contains a vast amount of information on the ceiling. And if you go there and you see everything is represented there, all the stellar situations, all the cosmic races, and the entire a star history of the gods and therefore of humanity is there on this ceiling. So when you go and look up truly, you cannot, there is no way to take it all in. All the details represented there on that ceiling is just something truly marvelous. So this is believed to be the temple of love, arts, and representing, dance and happiness and all of these creative expressions. So it's considered a mother goddess, Hathor, because the milk of the Milky Way, it's also to feed whatever it is about this humanity. So it represents one of these feminine characters, this feminine principle, this femininity principle, and a sister, because in certain texts it's referred to the goddess Hathor as the seven Hathors. And as you know, Pleiades is contained on and named after the seven daughters of Atlas and Pleione, and these are seven planets. So the seven sisters are always a clear reference to this star system, Pleiades. This temple has been restored many times in many different situations, but it's one of the most best preserved in whole Egypt, and you can see the beautiful blue colors still represented there. So it was preserved thanks to the Romans and the Greek, and the Roman Empire restored it, and that's how we keep this temple nowadays. So Hathor is a jewel. Yeah, it is a jewel, and it has really, truly a lot of information embedded in those hieroglyphs. It's very impressive, and one of my favorite temples ever. I think that it inspires us these feelings because the origin is there, is represented there, our own origin. So when a soul goes there, it can recognize its own origin and its own history. And this is why it's very impressive. And the first thing that you get when you go there is that your heart chakra gets totally open, and this is how we can recognize that it comes from the love of the mother goddesses, because this is mainly, they work with the heart chakra, and they are able to open up humanity's heart to unconditional love. And love is imagine the love of a mother is the biggest love ever. And I believe that we all on earth, we have experimented this type of love. So it is a real true connection with this representation in Egypt. But we have another goddess, which is also a very mysterious goddess that we know very few about her, and her name is Selkit, and she has a Scorpio over her head. And the other one is 𝐦�Divine, which is also a mother goddess. It's a protectress goddess, and she's a snake, and she's represented by this great cobra in fighting expectative position. So she represents the original consciousness of Andromeda, and Andromeda has also a great influence in humanity, in this civilization. This is one of the most main star systems that birthed us as the human race that we are. So all of these, star consciousnesses that I already narrated are the main base for human civilization. So these are the main gods and the main connections that we might have as star seeds as well. So we have the presence of Sirio, Lyra, Orion, Andromeda, Draconian, and also we have the presence of Pleiades. So it is quite interesting that we have all of these wisdom decoded in ancient Egypt in these great monuments. Okay, my dears, so with this exploration from today's episode, I'm gonna conclude the podcast. And yeah, I think these are the main presence of this cosmic consciousness in Egypt, but also I think there is so much more still to find and to connect deeper in the studies of Egyptology. And this is how I have been really trying to direct my academical studies in Egyptology. As an Egyptologist, I always bear in the back of my mind that I wanted to know this history, our cosmic history. And yeah, so I have had a lot of resistance in regards of the academics, but yeah, but somehow I managed to, by exploring by my own, and also because I know how to read the hieroglyphs, and because I remember a little bit of my past lives, and now with all the channeling of the Egyptian codes that I am downloading from, for example, the codes of Isis and Osiris that I have on my webpage, then I'm able to do these interpretations, and I am able to understand in a more esoterical, mystical way our real return to divinity, because the point of everything is that we finally take the decision from the bottom of our hearts to really reconnect with our own divinity, recover all this magic that we are, and just bring it to this present moment, because this is what we need right now. So, thank you so much for listening, and until next time, my dear and beloved starseeds.